Hello everyone, and welcome once again to GSN Spectrum Broadcasting's continuing coverage of the Murray Cup race. The MCR, or the Cup as it is more commonly known, is one of the finest sporting events in the UEE. Nearly 100 racers compete in the Classic Division's grueling 10-stage run, which winds its way through Ellis System's many wondrous planets and dual asteroid belts. Racers compete to determine who's the fastest and strongest as they struggle to maintain the integrity of their racecraft amid some of the deadliest conditions in the Empire. This year's competition promises to be one of the toughest, as the top 25 share in a meet and greet with media and sponsors in GSN's sports atrium in orbit above green. Though many come to race, only a few are considered real contenders, and those contenders are now awaiting their chance for glory and honour. This year's darling is Yokondi Remisk, a human who surprised everyone by winning both the Goss Invitational and the Cassini 500. He comes into the MCR with a real chance to be the first racer to win the Triple Crown in 12 years. Then there is Nyanel Motak Zuoa, the finest Xi'an racer in the history of the sport. If he prevails, he will be the first to ever win 3 MCRs in a row. Zogat Gul, the old Tavaran warhorse, can't be counted out either. This legend has won the MCR more than anyone else in its history, but fate and bad luck have prevented him from winning a major event in over 5 years. His second-place finish at the Cassini 500, however, has brought his name back to prominence. Can he win it once more before he fades away? And finally, newcomer Hypatia Daring has turned heads by taking the pole position away from Remisk. She has never won a major racing event in her short career, but her consistent top 10 showings for the last 2 years indicate that her pole position is no fluke. Can this youngster handle the enormous pressure placed upon her? Only time will tell. Let's throw it back to GSN reporter Mike Crenshaw, who is making his way through the reception as we speak. Who do you have for us now, Mike? Hypatia Daring didn't even notice the reporter's question as she stared across the busy reception floor. The Tavaran looked lean and elegant amid a gaggle of reporters who crowded around him. Part of her felt like joining the crowd. I should feel the need to whip his ass, to blow past him on the final stage, to force his ship into an asteroid. That would be the feelings of a great racer, a great competitor, one focused and ready to win. But no. Try as she might, she could not feel that way towards this legend who stood only a few meters away. Much to her sorrow, she hadn't had a chance to speak with him when their paths could have crossed at Cassini. Now she had to find the time. She fought the urge to walk across the room, push past the media hounds, invite him to dinner, and ask him to sign the worn, faded, dog-eared poster of him in his youth, standing proudly next to his silver M50, still hanging on her hab wall. She shook her head and blinked. I'm sorry, say again? Mike Crenshaw cleared his throat. Do you think Admiral Daring is proud of his daughter? Daring clenched her teeth and forced a smile. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? He has stated publicly, more than once, that he believes you are wasting your talents as a racer, that you should drop all this nonsense, his word, and pursue a more fitting career in the UEE Navy. My father has never been one to restrain his opinions, she said, taking tentative steps towards Ghoul. But if you really want to know the answer to that question, you should ask him yourself. Another reporter fought her way in. Alice Franiff, Terra Gazette, taking the pole position from Yokondi Remisk was a marvellous achievement. How did you do it? Her smile was genuine. Luck. Oh, come now, Hypatia, Crenshaw said, regaining the floor. Achieving a time 1.5 seconds off the record is hardly luck. How'd you do it? She chuckled. Patience, dedication, focus, and an acute attention to detail. That, plus the fastest damn M50 on the circuit. All things I'm sure my father would appreciate. The reporters laughed and hastily transcribed notes. Daring made a few more steps towards Ghoul. Miss Daring, another reporter interceded. How do you intend on maintaining your luck, as you put it, through the entire race? 10 stages, all timed, many with narrow, dangerous channels, especially through the asteroid belts. You'll be racing neck and neck with some of the finest racers in history. Being a relative newcomer, how do you intend on handling the pressure, maintaining your good start, and ultimately winning the cup. She's a natural. All turned, including Daring, and found Motak Zuar, the Xian, dressed in a bright purple jumpsuit, standing among a pool of sycophants who followed him to every event. Some of them were ex-GSN reporters, now under full employment by the Zhuoa House, captured by his fame, notoriety, and wealth. Daring controlled her scowl as the stout Xian stopped a few feet from her. "She's a natural," Motak repeated, to make sure the reporters could record his reply. He was shorter than Daring by a centimetre or two, which was still unusually tall for his race, but his cool, amber eyes scanned her face carefully. His powerful jaw muscles pulled back in a tight approximation of a smile. "She'll win it by being the best racer on the circuit." "Do you really believe that?" Crenshaw asked. "She's the best?" Motak nodded slowly, diplomatically, his eyes affixed on Daring. "I wouldn't have said it if I didn't," he blinked. "How are you, my dear? Rested from your trials at Cassini?" "Rested enough," she replied beneath her breath. The reporters leaned in to hear, but you should know all about that. Motak waved her off as if she were his lesser. "The dangers of the trade, my dear. I did what I had to do to gain advantage." Daring nodded. "But you didn't win, did you? Cutting me off in a move that, technically, was illegal, only gave you third place." "Still, a better finish than you," Motak chuckled. His devotees did the same. "The Cassini is not all that important to me, my dear. The MCR is the crown jewel. You'll understand that in time, if you last long enough." "Can we get a picture of the two of you side by side?" a reporter piped up. The rest confirmed that desire with exaggerated nodding. Motak turned to the crowd, preening for all to see. "Of course you may have a picture," he said, offering his hand to Daring in goodwill. "I'm honoured to be part of this great tradition. The MCR is dear to my heart, and with such brilliant competition, like Hypatia Daring here, this year's race will be one to remember." Hypatia took his hand cautiously. She wrapped her fingers around his broad palm. Forcing herself to relax, she turned towards the reporters to let them take their pictures and ask their questions. But then Motak began to squeeze, and squeeze, and squeeze until she felt the small delicate bones in her hand giving beneath the pressure. She squeezed back against it, but that didn't provide much relief as Motak continued to grip. "Don't cringe," she said to herself. "Don't cry. Don't give him the satisfaction." But the pain spread up her arm, into her shoulder, through her neck. "God, he's trying to break my hand. He released, and the pain subsided. She sighed and wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with her other hand. Crenshaw was about to ask another question, but then someone spotted Yokondi Remisk, and they all scurried in his direction. At her side, Motak chuckled. "We are only as important to them as our last quote." The Xian turned to her again. This time he didn't offer his hand. He winked. "Athela Col to you, my zealous competitor. Safe travel. I'll see you down the line." Motak disappeared into the doting arms of his fans. As he walked away, Daring caught the eye of a lean, surly-looking fellow who maintained a watchful position behind his employer. He nodded at her. She ignored him and imagined driving a knife into Motak's back. "Don't let him get to you." The voice was soft and amiable. Daring turned to greet it. There he stood, towering over her. In his shadow she felt truly small, both in stature and in status. Zogat Ghoul radiated a kindness and a quiet experience that steadied her rage. She offered her sore hand humbly. He took it without complaint. "Don't let that pompous twit get under your skin. He's infamous for his mind games." With a quick grin, he snapped into formal posture, as if he were greeting an officer, thrusting his chest out, though it was wrapped comfortably in a black and gold half-coat. "My name is Zogat. I know who you are," Daring interrupted, embarrassed immediately by her rudeness. "It's an honour to meet you. It's a dream I've had since I was a kid, and I've been following your career with great interest." He took her by the arm and began to lead her toward a table filled with 3 large punch bowls and an assortment of seafood appetizers. They walked slowly. "You are rising steadily on the circuit. Your name is on the lips of many. Your 5th place showing at Cassini was quite impressive, especially for someone so young. Thank you. It would have been even more impressive had I won, if Motak hadn't forced me back. You let him get too close, he said, with no malice or indictment in his tone. You had the inside lane, but you slowed down to spar with him. He pissed me off. Ghoul stopped. Such behaviour may be tolerated in the smaller, roundabout races like Cassini, but not here. Here, such raw emotion will get you expelled or killed. True, there are stages along the way where the racing will be tight, where you will have to manoeuvre for position, but speed matters the most here. Speed and time. Remember, Hypatia Daring, the one most important fact about the Murray Cup. Speed is life. He tilted his head to the side. Speed is life, or death, if you are going in the wrong direction. She laughed at that, letting the seriousness of his words trickle away. We will speak no more of these things now, he said, resuming their course toward the food table. We will have further opportunities to talk later, when the lamprey are not so thick and hungry. He ignored the wave of a reporter nearby. Every word we speak here is interpreted and reinterpreted until, in the end, they will make us lovers in the eyes of the public. Daring forced a wry smile. Sorry, you're not my type. Ghoul let out a hearty laugh. He shook his head. Story of my life. He quickened his pace towards the food. Now come, and treat me to a glass of the greatest gift humans have bestowed upon the galaxy. What's that? Daring asked. Ghoul smacked his lips. Lemonade. Motak crushed the thin shell of the jumbo shrimp in his mouth. He did not bother shucking it as a feeble human might do. Blast this human food anyway. What he wouldn't give to be back at the family complex, gorging to contentment on huge handfuls of fermented needlefish. Their gallbladders had a bile that was as sweet, no, sweeter, than anything a human might concoct. Nothing on the table before him was actually enjoyable in his superior opinion, but he tolerated it as best he could, smiling humbly as he picked at this dish or that for the benefit of the media. Motak nodded at a human reporter as she walked by. Humans had their uses. And so did the one that stood now in the centre of the media frenzy. Why weren't the reporters surrounding him, asking him questions, begging him to divulge his secrets for winning the race, just as they had asked Daring? These damned humans and their inferiority complex. So unwilling to recognise Xi'an's superiority. But Motak was the best racer that had ever climbed into a cockpit, and his perfectly modified 350R, with its purple hull and reinforced golden striped wings, would do what no other racer had ever done, win the MCR 3 consecutive times. Neither Remisk, nor Ghoul, nor Daring could claim such a feat. So why weren't the GSN Nya Osun Pu surrounding him? But perhaps that was best, he reconsidered, popping another shrimp in his mouth and sipping on a warm, frothless beer. Let Yokondi Remisk have his moment in the spotlight. Let the media have their favourites. For when they fall, when they fail to live up to the hype, Motak's victory will seem that much sweeter. Yes, let them bask, then let them fall, and I will see that they fall hard. Is everything in place? He whispered to an underling at his side. Yes, sir. Your maintenance crews are dispersed through the Ellis system per your specifications and per the MCR guidelines. Motak scratched his neck in frustration. That's not what I meant. The underling gulped and wiggled his head. Yes, that matter we spoke of has been taken care of as well, but I would recommend against it, sir. The risk is too great, and besides, Motak does not need to rely on such things. He is the best racer on the circuit. I do not pay you to give me such advice or praise. I pay you to do what you're told. Now go, and make sure everything is ready as I have instructed. He put his beer down. And I will go and remind the favourite of his obligation to me. The underling nodded and ran off to do his duty. Motak sighed deeply, put on his happy face, and walked confidently toward the madness surrounding Yokondi Remisk. She loved her Origin M50 Turbo more than life. Banged up, scratched, red and white paint slopped on to cover a hull that needed an integrity sweep, but there had been no time for any of that after Cassini, nor had she won enough credits yet for such repairs, not with having to pay for transport ships and her pit crew. But what of it? The power plant was sound, the thrusters new and top-notch. In a pinch, she doubted that any racer anywhere could match it. Certainly none of the other 24 challengers behind her, including Ghoul, could beat her in a straightaway, but the MCR had few straightaways. Hull integrity mattered. As her crew chief rattled off the final systems check in her ear, Daring pulled up the map for the first stage. It appeared with a bright blink to display row after row of rings winding their way through low orbit above Ellis 3. Daring studied the rings carefully, reminding herself of which ones were large, which were small, and where the cameras and timer buoys were located. All racers were required to stay within the invisible lane running through the rings. If a racer strayed outside, he or she would lose time. This first stage was both timed and awarded extra credits to first, second and third place. Having the pole position, then, gave her an advantage. But for how long? Daring leaned over in her seat and studied the course carefully. It was not unlike one stretch of the Goss Invitational, so she had ample experience with this kind of run. Her M50 was built for strenuous zigs and zags through tight spots. But how well would she fare later on, when the course got more deadly, more strenuous? From Ellis 3, the racers quantumed to Ellis 4, where the so-called Seahorse Shuffle took place. Then on to Ellis 5 and the Noble Endeavour. After that, it was through the first of 2 asteroid belts, a course called the Sorrow Sea, where hulls of previous racers floated as obstacles. Then around the gas giant Walleye, where ships could be easily ripped apart by one foolish move. A longer stage followed, across the outer asteroid belt, formerly Ellis 11, and finally to Ellis 12. Then the race turned back towards the heart of the system to finish at Ellis 8. She had run this race before, but never as a true contender, and thus she had taken her time, flown each stage slowly and steady, like a marathon runner, to learn all the ins and outs. This time, though, the pressure was on. She held the pole position, the top spot. Everything was different now. The MCR starter's voice crackled over the comlink. Racers, prepare for launch. Daring closed the map, affirmed the standard agreement to MCR rules and regulations in unison with the other racers, strapped herself in, and gave a small prayer. She was not religious by any stretch, but figured it wouldn't hurt. The prayer calmed her nerves as the bay doors of the starting carrier opened to space. She could see Ellis 3 through the door. It was beautiful, green, its orbit peppered with corvettes and pleasure craft of the well-to-do who had come out to view the race firsthand. There would be plenty of spectators along the way, a lot of media, and Daring had to just put them all out of her mind. She focused on Zogat Ghoul's words. Speed is life, and looked back through one of her cockpit panels to try and get a glimpse of the Tavaran's upgraded Hornet. But he was too far back. All she could see was Yokondi Remesk's M50, with its garish gold and blue trim. She noticed that he was too close to her. By rule, there was a specified distance that racers had to maintain prior to launch, the privilege of the pole position. She gnashed her teeth and cursed beneath her breath. Someone was already violating rules. Hypatia Daring, you may launch. She didn't even wait for the spokesman to finish. Daring burst out the carrier bay door at top legal speed. Through a narrow channel flanked by media and spectators, Daring flew the ceremonial lap. The rest of the racers followed behind, releasing one after another, but maintaining their specified positions within the line. Ahead of her, the pacecraft sparkled with a flashing red light. Nervous energy spotted her brow with sweat. Her crew chief gave his final comments and instructions. She signed him off and focused on the course ahead of her. In her ear, the MCR starter counted down. 10, 9, 8. Daring thrust to the left, trying to keep directly behind the pacecraft. Yokondi Remesk was right on her 6, the nose of his racer dangerously close. Back off, Daring mouthed silently, wanting to flip on her comlink and tune to his frequency. It wasn't strictly against MCR rules to speak to other racers, but officials discouraged it, fearing that frequent conversation during the race could produce distractions that would lead to crashes and injuries. Besides, there was enough chatter going on between racers and their crews. Still, Daring wanted to open a channel and scream into Remesk's ear, Get off my back. 5, 4, 3. Now, all the racers tightened as the pacer made the last turn to set them up toward the first rings. Daring gunned it a little herself, closing in on the pacer. She put herself now just a little to the right of it, to keep Remisk from rushing past her at the last minute. Daring's heart raced. Her hands shook on her joystick. She tried concentrating on the small object that grew and grew in her viewport. The first ring, its rotating light swirling around its virtual frame, signalling the beginning. 2, 1. The red lights on the pacer flashed green, and it fell to the left quickly, breaking formation. Daring pressed herself into her seat, gunned her thrusters, and blew through the first ring. The flashing lights of the rings caused her eyes to ache. They flew by her quickly, and she was concentrating on them too much, too worried about her time, her position in the line. She had fallen to 3rd place by count of the last timing ring. It had been her fault too, worrying so much about conserving fuel, letting some pilot with an overclocked Avenger take the inside lane. Her crew chief yelled at her for it. She ignored him. The little shit was right, of course, but he was an old academy friend of her father's, and she was in no mood to listen to him yell at her. Besides, she could overtake an Avenger at any time. The real focus of her recovery had to be Yokondi Remisk. The smarmy son of a bitch had forced her against the left wall of the tunnel they were speeding through. Her wing had actually broken the virtual plane, and the voice of the MCR caller came over the comm. 10 seconds added to your time. Damn. Remisk's press was not strictly against the rules since his ship had not touched hers, but it was certainly dirty pool and against the spirit of the competition. She had no way out of the pick and roll either. It was as if he and the Avenger pilot were in cahoots. That wouldn't surprise her in the least. She refocused and thrust her M50 forward, dipping beneath the Avenger and slipping past it on the low. It tried muscling her back, pointing its right wing down to mask her view, but Daring anticipated the move, shifted in kind, and kept her position and composure. Meanwhile, the Avenger pilot had lost his focus on the lane ahead of him and failed to notice the ring closing fast and to the left. Daring hit her thrusters hard and shifted left, at the last minute moving out of the Avenger's path. Daring took the turn and ring perfectly. The Avenger saw it too late, tried to adjust, and clipped the ring with its left wing. It broke the invisible plane of the tunnel and then overcompensated into a spin through the void. Eat that. She hoped that somewhere behind her, Ghoul was cheering. She could almost hear his resonant voice singing her praises. She liked the thought, but the most pressing concern now was right in front of her. Remisk had been pushing his craft at full speed the entire course. How was that possible, she wondered. Sure, he had customized his M50 like all the rest, removing everything extraneous for extra fuel and cooling equipment, but he must be running on fumes by now after boosting like that. There was no other explanation. He would have to burn out soon, and the sooner the better. She ignored the 3 other racers pressing hard at her 6. She took the next ring and the next, letting the strong inertia pull and propel her craft forward. That was the best way to avoid overheating. She had learned racing around Saturn. Release thrust on the turns, and let your craft drift at top speed into the vector. Then you had enough thrust to pick up the few seconds you might have lost on drift. This racing gig was a game of milliseconds, and each one counted. She moved up behind Remisk, taking advantage of the last straightaway before the final turns through the ultimate 3 rings. There was not much time left, and she had to make her move now. She tried shifting up and over his craft. He moved to block her. She shifted down. He moved again, in perfect unison, their ships equal size. She shifted left, right, and each time Remisk moved to counter. How is he doing this? He was a great racer, there was no doubt of that. He was strong, athletic, and cool-headed. Remisk had not gotten where he was on the circuit without being smart and precise. But his moves, his instincts were almost supernatural, as if his senses were enhanced. But that was impossible. Every racer went through a rigorous medical exam to ensure that no drugs had been introduced before the race, and further testing would be conducted along the way to ensure none had been taken after the first stage. Remisk was just that good. then I have to be better. She pushed her engine to its limit, exceeding safe levels, much to the ire of her crew chief. He implored her to back off, take second or third place, don't risk blowing your ship so soon for so little reward. Little reward my ass. She had taken the pole position and she was going to let everyone know that it was not some fluke, that Hypatia Daring was here to stay. She wouldn't give her fath the media grist for their mill. She barrel-rolled, letting the rotation of her M50 spiral her forward like a screw. Remisk, fearing that he would be clipped himself, shifted ever so slightly to his left, and Daring pounced. She pulled alongside him, letting her craft settle. She punched her thrusters again, feeling them wail their discontent through her arms and hands. Her stick was shaking, her heat warnings blaring. She could feel it all through her body, and there was, in all the galaxy, no feeling like it. It was something her father had forgotten. He was a good fighter pilot himself, or at least he was in his youth, but he had spent too much of his life in slow giants like destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. He had forgotten what it was like to feel flesh tingle as strong G-forces threatened to rip your skin from its bones. Ghoul understood it. Remisk most certainly did. And even that sorry son of a bitch Motak understood the ecstatic feeling of sheer speed. She pulled ahead. She took the next ring flawlessly, shifting against inertia and rolling through the next ring, which appeared immediately after the last. The final ring loomed large in the distance. Her crew chief, his attitude suddenly changed, barked, "Go! Go!" into her ear. She smiled. She'd made the right decision. She most definitely deserved to be here racing among the greats. Remisk pulled up above her, obviously giving her first place. She kept her course forward and strong, letting her warning systems holler. She giggled like a child, accepting praise from her chief. The flashing lights of the last ring did not make her weak or sick this time. She welcomed them happily. Then a shadow came up over her, darkening her cockpit. It was Remisk, his M50 finding new life and overtaking her ship. In her joy, Daring had not realised that her thumb had lightened its pressure on her throttle, and she had slowed just slightly. Slowed enough for Remisk to swing his craft up and over her hull and plant itself, with its main thrusters, right in front of her cockpit. Daring tried keeping her speed and course, but Remisk kicked his boost and threw a gout of yellow fire across her cockpit windows. Daring rolled left. It was a serious mistake. She tried regaining her position, pressed her thumb deeply into the throttle, but it was too late. Yakondi Remisk passed through the final ring in first place. The Avenger and one other racer took second and third, while Daring, her ship rolling uncontrollably through the last ring, barely finished fourth. At the end of the first stage in the Murray Cup race through the Ellis system, Yakondi Remisk edged out Hypatia Daring with a boost flare that, while technically legal, was definitely dangerous. Both of these two human racers finished ahead of their main competition, the veteran Tavaran Zogat Ghoul and the wily Jian Nyanal Motak Zuoa. Daring reacts to Remisk's manoeuvre. Daring jumped out of her racer, sped across the carrier bay floor, found Remisk in the middle of a media gang, and drove her fist towards his cheery face. He ducked, just in time. One of Remisk's crew grabbed Daring and held her back as she hurled accusations. "You son of a bitch! You could have killed me!" Remisk recovered from the attempted assault and played it cool in front of the crowd, adjusting his collar and giving a weak smile. "I don't know what you're talking about, Daring. I ran a clean race. You tried to burn me alive." Shock and dismay spread among the faces of those gathered. Out of the corner of her eye, Daring could see an MCR official coming their way with a concerned look on his face, but she didn't care. She fought her way out of the crewman's grasp and took another swing. Remisk caught her arm and held it tightly. "Back off, Daring," he said, "or I'll file a complaint." "I'll file one requesting your dismissal, you cheap—" "Humans, come now, let's remain civil." Motak pushed his way through the crowd and stood beside Remisk. He waited until the MCR rules official arrived, then continued. "Attend these words. I can assure you that from my perspective, Mr. Remisk violated no MCR rules. In fact, not only was his move brilliant in its simplicity, but it showed a deep dedication to the integrity of the sport. Remisk never once touched his ship to miss Darring's. He showed incredible care in the manoeuvre. I can attest to that. You can attest to kissing my... Ghoul stepped in and peeled Remisk's fingers from Darring's arm. He whispered into her ear. Come on, let's go. Not here. Not this way. Motak chuckled. You should listen to him, young one. Ghoul is a wise soul. Ghoul ignored Motak and pulled Darring through the crowd. I said let's go. She relented, and they made their way out of the carrier bay and into a long, narrow corridor that led to a small atrium with chairs and tables that looked out over Ellis 3. The planet's orbit was alive with the race as it continued with the remaining racer groups down the list. It was a beautiful display, the rings of the course pulsing their light, and the blur of racecraft rushing through them at marvellous speeds. Darring looked out at it, and her anger began to subside. Take a seat, Hypatia, Ghoul said as he pulled one chair away from a table. Darring sat, crossed her arms, and kept looking out at the race. Ghoul sat down across from her, taking care as he bent into the human-style chair. Now tell me, what was that all about? Darring did not respond at first, but she met Ghoul's stern gaze with her own. Then she blinked, sighed, and said, He cheated. He cut me off and blew fire into my face. It is not a violation of the rules, and you know it. Well, it should be. You know, Ghoul said, shaking his head and leaning back, I would not expect a loose cannon like yourself to be such a slave to the rules. Darring finally smiled. A residual from my father's parenting. Play by the rules, Hypatia, she said, imitating a deep manly voice. Win by the rules, and they can never have cause to take your victories away. It is a noble statement, Ghoul said, but, in racing, a touch naive. There are rules, and then there are rules. But you pull something like that again, especially with witnesses, and you're the one that will be expelled, not Remisk. Darring sloughed off his warning. He's a jackass, and so is Motak. That is true, but there's nothing you can do about it right now. They will do what they have to do to win, and you must keep your cool. Besides, Ghoul said, his gaze growing more serious, his face cast down toward the racers rushing past, I want my last race to be against the best, and if you are expelled, then it will be against wannabes and has-beens. Darring wrinkled her brow with concern. Why is this your last? You have many years ahead. Ghoul nodded. Many years perhaps, but not as a racer. Every joint aches, every bone brittle, and my eyes are failing. It is time. Darring sat quiet, not wanting to speak, not wanting to accept that her hero was near the end. And she had just met him. How could he be leaving now, when she had so much to speak to him about, so much to learn? Afterwards, he would likely return home, wherever that may be, and she'd never see him again. Time would be so precious during the race. When would she have another opportunity to talk to him, to learn from him? If this is his last cup, she thought, then perhaps I should back off a bit, let him have a course or two, let him take the lead when... What is that look? She turned to him, shrugged innocently. What look? Ghoul leaned forward. You're thinking about throwing the race for me, aren't you? You're thinking, give the old Tavaran one more victory. Well, forget such nonsense. My people are warriors, Hypatia, and we have a saying. Honour your enemy, praise him if you must, but never lose a chance to kill him. Here, you and I are friends. Out there, he said, pointing to the race, we are foe. Promise me that if we find ourselves neck and neck on the final lap, and you have an opportunity to win, that you will show me no mercy, no quarter, and then at least I will know that if I lose, I have lost against the best. Promise me. His face was so serious. Darring knew that he would not let her leave the room until she promised, and did so sincerely. She nodded. I promise. Ghoul stood. Excellent. Now I owe you a dinner. Hungry? Famished. They walked together through the corridor, took a turn toward the carrier's mess. It was a good idea to get a full meal before heading to LS4, and some rack time as well. The next several legs of the race would be tough, and Darring would have to face her crew chief soon and figure out if any serious damage had been done to her engine. It was not a conversation she was looking forward to. Have your crew chief speak to mine, Ghoul said. He's an old M50 pilot and has been around as long as I... Ghoul did not finish his words. They had turned a corner and there stood 3 humans, wrapped in dark clothing to match the faint light of the corridor. The 3 did not hesitate. One pulled a knife and slashed towards Daring's throat. She leaned back instinctively and felt the wind of the brutal attack across her chin. The blade did not find flesh, however, and she tumbled back against the wall. The other 2 were on Ghoul immediately, but despite the Tavaran's confession of joint pain, he moved quickly, subduing one in a headlock and guarding off the fists of the other. Daring tried to get to him, but her assailant was not finished. He slashed again with his blade, this time toward her stomach. She knocked his arm back with a move she had learned in Basic, then drove her fist into his kidney. As the man lurched back, recovering from the blow, Daring recognized his face. He was from Motak's entourage, the one who had shielded his boss and nodded to her as the Xian had walked away. She gnashed her teeth, scowled, and drove her boot into his crotch, knocking him to his knees. She continued her assault against his face, striking him twice before he managed to turn, kick out his leg, and swipe her feet from beneath her. Daring fell hard, her hip reeling from its concussion against the corridor floor. He was on her again, but she was ready. She timed her move, brought her knees up quickly and flung him into the corridor. She tried rising to pursue, but the body of another assailant flew over her and hit the wall. She looked towards Ghoul and found him making mincemeat of the third man's face. His companions, bloody, beaten, and clearly not wishing further punishment, collected themselves quickly and dashed away. Ghoul released the third man, pushed him back against the wall. Daring tried moving against him, but despite his mangled face, he got away from her grasp, grabbed his blade, and shot away down the corridor in the opposite direction of his accomplices. Daring went to Ghoul's side. He had slipped down the wall and was holding a bloody gash across his stomach. Daring moved his hand away to look at it. "Bastards," she said, helping him to his feet. "Bloody bastards. Come on, let's get you to the hospital." Ghoul shook his head and pushed her away. "No, just get me to my crew. It's not that bad. I've had worse. But we have to tell someone about this. Tell them it's Remisk and Motak." "How do you know that?" "One of the men. I saw him in Motak's gang the other day." He nodded. "But you can't prove it." "Come on, Ghoul," she said, letting her anger rise again. "Don't play stupid. You know who ordered this." "You may be right, but they are far too smart to leave evidence lying around. And if you're wrong, then it will reflect badly on you, especially after your unprovoked assault against Remisk. Motak has too many friends among MCR officials. This will go away as quickly as it was attempted." He pointed down the corridor, toward the atrium and out to space. "We'll beat them out there." Reluctantly, Daring nodded. She did not like the plan, but let it rest. The most important thing now was to get him to someone, anyone, who could help. Putting an arm around his waist, she helped him back to his crew. "You're late," Motak said, sitting quietly in the dark of the room. Remisk took no time to express his agitation. "It's got to stop, Motak. It's gone too far." "How so? They could have been killed, both of them. That's not what I signed up for." "What did you sign up for?" "Sabotage is fine. Damaging an engine, clogging a fuel line, denting a wing, forcing a racer back with an illegal move. These are all fine. Win or lose, succeed or fail. It's all part of the unspoken game. But trying to kill people is another matter entirely." Motak chuckled. "What would you rather do? Race the final course with only me to contend with? Or with Ghoul and Daring as well? The Tavaran is a beast, and that whelp is far better than anyone gives her credit for. If they remain in the race, you'll go down in history as the man who had a chance, but failed to win the Triple Crown." "You will fail regardless," Motak said to himself. "Once I've dealt with Ghoul and Daring." "It's over, Motak," Remisk said, emphasizing his point with a swipe of his arm. "I'm not doing your dirty work anymore." Motak turned on an overhead lamp resting on a table at his side. Beneath the cast light lay a small, gold-coloured box, which he carefully opened. A small syringe lay in its centre. He picked up the syringe and held it as if he were going to give someone a shot. "Oh, I think you will. You still have things to do for me, and if you don't, I will share with the MCR Rules Committee what is contained in this needle." "What is it?" Motak shrugged. The very thing that has given you an almost inhuman focus, an ability to anticipate moves 3-4 turns ahead. That's a lie. I've never taken drugs in my life. I've been planning this for a long time, Remisk. So let me lay it out for you. A young, successful pilot wants to make a name for himself. He wins the Goss Invitational by a nose and begins to think he really has a shot at winning the Triple Crown. He goes to a small-time dealer and asks, "What can you give me that can't be detected by scanners?" The dealer gives him this, which I gave the dealer, a Xi'an concoction called Etam. For us, it produces a mild meditative state, but when introduced to human brain chemistry, it creates a state of hyper-awareness, an almost extrasensory perception. MCR scanners at their current settings cannot detect it, and you have been taking microdoses for months. You're a liar. Motak ignored the accusation. And here's the catch. There's enough in here to keep you vital to the end of the race. Take it, and you'll be fine. If not, somewhere around LS9, as your ship is being pulled by the gravitational forces of that giant gas ball, you will go into withdrawal, fall into a deep sleep, and be crushed by the tidal forces of its wild weather. Motak held up the syringe for Remisk to see, letting a few drops squirt from the needle tip. What will it be, my friend? Life or death? Remisk stood in the darkness for a long time. Then finally, he rolled up his sleeve and offered his forearm. You're a bastard. Motak punched the needle into a vein. No, Remisk, I'm not. I'm just a businessman, protecting his investment. He pushed the entire dose into Remisk's arm, then laid the empty syringe in the golden box. Remisk got up and rolled down his sleeve. He turned to leave, but Motak stopped him. Oh, he said, reaching into a pocket and producing a silver capsule. He pitched it to Remisk. Get this to our man on Daring's crew, and see he puts it where we have discussed. We want to make sure that upstart has a pleasant ride through the boneyard. Remisk left. Motak lingered in the dark, chewing the inside of his left cheek, considering the future. He sighed. He should never have relied on Remisk, on a human, to do the work. They could never be trusted. He'd never had one pleasant experience with them in all his life. Not as a racer, not during his many years of mandatory military service, not as a young adult, and certainly not as a child, when human pirates had scattered his family and killed his mother. There wasn't one in the bunch worth a damn. But Remisk, could he be trusted to finish the job against Daring? Motak shrugged. It hardly mattered anyway. Whether he did or did not, Remisk's time in the race was coming to a close. With the dose I gave him, Motak thought, getting up and leaving the room, he won't survive the boneyard either. Hello again, and welcome to another broadcast of GSN's continuing coverage of the Murray Cup race. After a rough start that saw Hypatia Daring warned and reprimanded for her unsportsmanlike conduct, things have calmed down. Miss Daring has kept her cool and has fought her way back to contention with a stunning head-to-head struggle around LS5 against veteran Zogat Ghoul. Though these two are reported to be close friends, no love is lost between them as they make their way through these dangerous courses. But now the most contentious portion of the race is upon us. The Sorrow Sea, or as most of the racers call it, the boneyard, looms large in the cockpit window. Can anyone brave the shattered hulls and sharp asteroids that hazard this course? Let's find out. Motak was on her left, Ghoul on her right, and somewhere behind her, Remisk waited to pounce. It had been like this for a long time, shifting back and forth through broken hulls of previous races and multi-ton asteroids, some so large that their gravity tugged on her hull as she passed. Her radar displayed the boneyard in all its glory, and there were many paths to take through the obstacles, some shorter, some longer. This was a timed course, but the lanes sometimes narrowed to force racers to poke and prod one another, thus making it one of the deadliest in the race. The broken hulls of the hollow racecraft around her confirmed its danger. She shifted left and took one of the shorter paths. Doing so would put her closer to the finish line, but the obstacles here were ridiculous in their distribution. She turned left, barreled tightly through a wide hole of an ancient hull. The racer right behind her broke formation and flew down another path. At her speed, Daring could not tell if it had been Remisk or not, but one less bee in her bonnet was okay by her. Motak was still on her left, however. Ghoul had broken formation as well and had chosen a longer path, but one less constricted with debris. She could see his little red blip on her radar, and several others training on him from all angles. He was in deep shit if any of those other racers worked in silent unison to push him off course. His modified Hornet would have trouble with excessive obstacles, but then that's why he took the longer route. He was no idiot. Motak turned his 350R sharply and shot above her. Images of Remisk's scorching exhaust flooded her mind, but this time she ignored her impulse and kept course. Speed is life. A Banu racer in their heavily upgraded Avenger slipped in alongside her. There were a few Banu in the race, and Daring could not remember the name of this one, but she remembered the distinct green and black striped hull. They tried forcing her into the craterous side of the asteroid ahead of them. Daring took a thumb off the thrust, acting as if she were going to slow and allow the Banu to take position, but at the last moment she gunned her thrusters, shifted sharply up so that the belly of her M50 skimmed mere inches from the crater floor, kicking up dust from its ejector blanket and blowing it back into the cockpit of the Avenger on her tail. The Banu had to turn sharply to the left, giving advantage once again to Daring. I can play dirty too. Daring laughed into the ear of her crew chief, who was warning her to take it slow and not risk getting her hydrogen scoops clogged. He was worried about her engine, which had been refitted after its overexertion around green. There was still so much race left, and he was especially concerned with LS9, the gas giant that would place strenuous pressure on her hull. He didn't want her engine to go down a second time as well, but she was enjoying herself. She was enjoying the Sorrow Sea, the boneyard, in all its wondrous danger. Only Motak annoyed her now. The rest of her competition had fallen behind or had taken different routes. The route ahead of her was still tricky, but it was hers. She commanded it now, and she leaned back in her restraints and let her engine run. And now Motak fell back, and his blip on her radar stopped flashing red in danger. She was free, and the finish line was close. A warning light suddenly flashed on her cooling monitors. She looked down and saw that her engine's heat dissipation had fallen sharply. She pressed controls, tapped panels, and now other warning lights were flashing. Something was wrong with her fuel. It was rising in temperature, too fast, too hot, and the cooling system could not dissipate the excess heat fast enough. It was burning her engine, and her hull shifted and sputtered, pressing her forward against her restraints. She tapped her comlink. Something's wrong here. Engine reaching critical heat. Check your heat release override valve on the... She tried doing as her crew chief advised, but before she could move her arm, fire exploded into her cockpit, engulfing her torso and helmet. She panicked, trying to pat the fire out with her gloves, but that did nothing. The flames grew larger and larger, working their way under her jumpsuit, piercing the protective lining at her neck and burning her face and shoulders. "Power plant breach imminent," screamed the safety system in her ear. "Power plant breach imminent." Through searing pain, Hypatia Daring reached beneath her cockpit seat, tapped the eject pad, and blew her cockpit enclosure into space. Thrusters beneath her seat erupted, and she tumbled after the cockpit, still strapped into her chair, gasping for air. 5 seconds later, before she lost consciousness, Daring watched her M50 explode into 1,000 pieces. Daring awoke in a quiet, sanitised room of white walls and beeping monitors. She lay in a medbay tub containing a pale, viscous gel. There were monitoring nodes on her neck and chest. She lifted her arm out of the fluid and tried sitting up. A strong hand kept her from doing so. "Not yet," the voice said. "Not until the doctor says it's okay." She laid her head back against the tub wall and blinked repeatedly until the figure above her came into focus. "Zogat," she said, her voice cracking, her throat dry and pasty. Where? "Carrier infirmary," he said, "in orbit above Ellis 8. She tried sitting up again and felt a deep pain in her shoulder as she moved her arms. She reached across her chest and felt a layer of burnt skin, soft and supple due to the fluid, but still present. Terrifying memories flooded back. My ship? Ghoul nodded. Unsalvageable. It's now a part of the Sorrow Sea. Daring massaged her sore shoulder. What happened? They do not know for certain, but your ship went through a rapid temperature increase that ignited the power plant. It's a wonder it didn't explode while you were still strapped in. Do they know what caused it? They couldn't recover enough of the fuselage and its monitoring equipment to know the exact cause, but... He paused, letting the word linger there in the space between them. Remisk has confessed. What? He's confessed to it. Went mad, in fact. Attacked a reporter. Nearly ripped off her face. He says he put some kind of capsule into your tank, or rather, hired someone on your crew to do it, which, by the way, has been scrubbed. He even confessed to sending those thugs against us. She nodded, feeling a moment of relief. Then Motak is finished as well. Ghoul cast his eyes down. He shook his head. No, Hypatia. Motak has confessed nothing, nor has Remisk implicated anyone else. He's gone catatonic. Can't speak, can't move. He's on something, but it can't be detected. They fear he'll die before he's interrogated. He's out, but Motak is still in and has condemned Remisk publicly in the most powerful words. The race has been suspended for a few days so that all remaining crews can conduct a mandatory check of their ships. Then it will resume. He shook his head. There are 3 things certain in the galaxy, as you humans might say. Death, taxes, and the MCR. The race will go on. Daring closed her eyes and laid her head back once again. She fought tears. Yes, but it's over for me. A pause. Then, not yet. She tried asking how, but on cue, the room door opened and in walked Motak, straight and proud, wearing a fresh jumpsuit of gold and purple. 3 reporters followed in his wake, one with a camera. He pulled his mouth back and said in a sincere voice, "Ah, I am so glad to see you awake. You had us all worried." I bet. She wanted to say those very words, but the strong pressure that Ghoul placed on her arm with his hand recommended otherwise. She forced her anger down and tried to smile. "It seems as if the fates are on my side." Motak nodded. "Indeed. And it would also seem that Lady Luck has granted you favour as well. With my gift, you can now return to the race." "What gift?" Motak seemed surprised. "Your friend hasn't told you." "I was just about to," Ghoul said. "Well, then let me say it proudly for all to hear." Motak adjusted his position among the reporters, giving them time to ready. The Xian cleared his throat. "I and the Zuoa Family Corporation want to again strenuously condemn Yakondi Remisk's actions. His cowardly assaults are inconsistent with what I and the MCR are all about. The integrity of the race must be maintained. Thus, as a gesture of goodwill and healthy competition, I have donated my personal M50 so that Hypatia Daring can return to the race." It took a moment for the announcement to register in her mind. To help drive the point home, a vid screen activated to reveal a clean, gold and purple trimmed M50. It was brilliant, beautiful. Daring loved it, but worried about Motak's motivation. "No way!" she barked, pulling herself up in the tub. "I'm not putting one toe into that." Ghoul applied pressure to her arm once again. "What Miss Daring is saying is that she would be honoured to accept your gift and looks forward to further competition in the days ahead." "Hey," she said, pulling her arm away. "Don't answer for me. I'm not a child, damn it." "Well, let's leave Miss Daring and Mr. Ghoul alone," Motak said. "Clearly they have much to discuss." He leaned over Daring's tub and stared into her eyes, his mouth inches from her face. "I'm so glad to see you well. Please do accept my offer. It would be a shame to lose one with so much talent." They scurried out, but left the image of the M50 on the vid screen. When the door closed, she rounded on Ghoul. "You don't answer for me." Ghoul shook his head. "If you refuse this offer from Motak, he will have won thrice, by getting rid of Remisk, by getting rid of you, and by further damaging your reputation. Racing is as much about your public image as it is about skill. You already have a bad reputation. Don't damage it further by being ungracious. But it's his ship, she said, pointing to the vid screen. He's done something to it, I'm sure. Ghoul shook his head. No, he's not that stupid. There's too much light on the competition now, too much that's transpired. He can't afford to offer this gift and then sabotage it. He's done all he can do. It's a matter of who's the best now. There's plenty of racing left, Hypatia. Go out there and prove to everyone, prove to Motak, that you will not be stopped, that you are the best. Despite the logic in his words, Daring wanted to refuse Motak's gift. On the other hand, to beat Motak with his own ship would be so lovely. But it wasn't just a matter of getting up and strapping into the cockpit. Every M50 had its own quirks, its own personality. There were always balancing issues, thrust issues, drift issues that needed to be identified and learned. The cockpit displays would need to be configured to her own preferences, which would take time to sort out. And it could take weeks for her to get comfortable on the stick and throttle. She had maybe 48 hours to make it all work. Her burns were healing in this goo around her, but her flesh was tight and still stung beneath her movements. Motak was setting her up to fail. He didn't need to sabotage the ship, she realised. Her current condition was enough to slow her down. And now Ghoul was taking advantage of their new friendship. He had no right to interrupt her and speak for her publicly. Ghoul may admire me, she thought as she pulled herself up and sat on the edge of the tub. Now, he needs to respect me. Okay, Zogat, she said, looking around for a towel. You win. I'll accept his offer. I'll show him I'm the best. But more importantly, I'll show you. Hello again, and welcome to another GSN Spectrum broadcast of the Murray Cup race. After the tragedy rising from the Sorrow Sea, Daring's near-death experience, and Remisk's shocking confession, the competition has gotten back on track and has settled into a sweet groove. From the midway checkpoint and out all the way to Ellis 12, the top racers have pushed their craft to the limit. Hypatia Daring has come back with a vengeance, accepting Motak's M50 and taking 2 of the last 3 stages through the asteroid belt and back to the final checkpoint at Ellis 8. The competition around Ellis 9 in particular proved raucous, as Daring slowed to allow Motak to gain the lead while dodging Ghoul's Hornet, forcing him to flirt with the eyes-crushing tidal forces. No love was lost between those two during the following press conference. But now, the Tavaran veteran has surprised everyone once again by taking the final obstacle course in the outer asteroid belt, showing a refinement that proves he will go down in history as one of the finest pilots ever to race the Cup. Now the competition enters its final leg with only 65 races remaining, and the top 3 positions held by Motak, Daring and Ghoul. Can these 3 powerhouses hold out, or will someone else fly past and beat them all? The final leg awaits. Let's kick it back to Mike Crenshaw, who's in the thick of it. What's the mood on the carrier, Mike? Raw. That's what Daring was. Just a raw nerve, always ready to spark if given a chance. Ghoul had hoped to share with her a little of his experience, teach her some wisdom, in a sport just as rough on the spirit as it was on the body and mind. And perhaps she had learned a little. She was racing better, manoeuvring better, taking to heart his philosophy. Speed is life. But looking across the carrier bay floor at her as she ran a cloth across the belly of her borrowed M50, Zogat Ghoul could not tell if Daring's improvement was motivated by skill or anger. Did it really matter? In the end, if she blew across the finish line in first place, it would all boil down to victory. And that was the ultimate goal of everyone in the race. Go home a winner, or just go home. Hypatia Daring has it out for you, doesn't she? Crenshaw's face was all perky, as if he had just said something infinitely clever and devious. Ghoul did not take the bait. She is a tough competitor. Like a Tavaran, she shows her enemy no mercy. But she held back around the eye just to force you to lose. That's the move of someone bearing a grudge. What did you do? What indeed? Perhaps he had come on too strong. Was it when he interrupted her and spoke for her publicly at the hospital? She would not say when he asked. Instead, she would change the subject or walk away. But direct action, direct speech was his way. Surely she realized he was right. She had to compete. She had to accept Motak's offer and finish the race. Not just for herself, but for the honor of her family. Surely she did not blame him for pointing that out. Scurry away, bug. Motak appeared, alone this time, and flicked his fingers at Crenshaw as if he were swatting a fly. The Tavaran warrior will not condescend to answer such a silly question. Shoo, go bother someone else. Crenshaw pulled a ruleful face, but retreated nonetheless. When he was gone, Motak closed on Ghoul and offered his hand. Good luck, he said. You want to break my hand like you tried to break Hypatia's? I wouldn't dream of it, my friend. I merely want to wish you a safe final course. This is your last, isn't it? Ghoul nodded. Perhaps. And you are braced to win it all and be remembered as the greatest racer in the history of the sport. For that, I wish you good luck. Ghoul took the handshake reluctantly. Motak's fingers were firm but not vice-like. He moved until he was beside the Tavaran. Motak placed his free hand on Ghoul's back. Look at it all one last time, Zogat. All of it. The bay, the races, the media, the hustle and bustle of the cruise. You will miss it, but I think you will miss that young lady right there most of all. Before Ghoul had a chance to speak, Motak pushed his hand hard against the Tavaran's neck. Ghoul felt a slight pinch and jerked away. A warm flush spread across his skin. What did you do? Motak maintained his composure and kept looking forward as if they were having a pleasant conversation. To win against races as skilled as yourself and Daring will be quite the honour, he said, as the media crowded around once more. Good luck out there, old friend. Ghoul rubbed his neck. The Xian had done something to him, but Motak had again done his scheming in such a way that left very little evidence. Perhaps if Ghoul called the MCR authorities over now, they could find something, but more likely his accusations would prove to be unfounded. He looked out at everyone suiting up, strapping in, readying for the final course. He could choose not to race. If Motak had drugged him as he suspected, then it would be quite dangerous to climb into his cockpit. But he quickly shoved the thought aside. He couldn't get out now, not when the end was so close. It wasn't in him. He had to take his own advice. He had to finish the race. He looked across the bay floor, towards Daring. She was putting on her helmet, getting ready to climb into her cockpit. He tried catching her attention with a wave. She did not see him, or she was ignoring him. Whatever the reason, he was grateful that he had had an opportunity in the twilight of his career to race against such a warrior, such a competitor as she. Speed is life, he thought as he put on his helmet with shaking hands. But as always, speed also might mean death. Ghoul was just ahead of her, Motak at her 6. She was perfectly placed to take advantage of the Tavaran's erratic behaviour. He had been speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, as if unsure what to do. Or perhaps he was playing with her, working to sap her resolve, force her to slow down and deal with his uncharacteristic movements, thus giving the lead away to Motak. But that was silly. Ghoul did not want the ruthless Xian to win any more than she did. So what was his game? They raced in high orbit above Ellis 8. The final stretch was a long, looping, crazy 8 of rings that flashed brilliant reds and greens and whites, keeping a tempo with the natural flow of the races as they shot past one another near the intersect. It was a dangerous place, for racers coming out of those rings could slam into one another and ricochet into space. Even if your ship survived, the time it would take to recover from such a collision would be race-ending. 2 orbital grandstands just outside the course held spectators and prominent dignitaries that had come out to see and share in the glory of the winner. The MCR allowed the energy and excitement of the crowd to be broadcast into the cockpits of each racer as GSN announcers gave the minute-by-minute account of the final laps. Some racers thrived on the energy of the crowds. Some revelled in the noise. Daring muted it all, preferring instead to concentrate on the races around her. She manoeuvred her M50 to the right of Ghoul, taking advantage of the loop. He swung his Hornet out a touch too far, and she slipped right in beside him. His wing grazed the invisible walls of the ring course, letting the tip of it cut through the barrier like a shark's fin cresting a wave. He'd lose time for that, but he didn't seem to care, keeping his craft pressed against the loop to ride it all the way around. He's getting old, she thought, letting a smile slip across her lips. Can't handle the rigours of such a sharp turn anymore. Then she thought better of gloating. She wanted to beat him, to make him see her as a racer, an equal, not as a puppy dog to counsel. But she didn't want him to leave the race. There was still plenty of track left, plenty of twists and turns, and Motak was right on them. The Xi'an thrust his 350R down to run right below her belly, preventing an interloper behind him in a souped-up Avenger from making a move. Daring banked to the right and felt the tug of strong G's despite being held tightly in the chair. Her skin had healed well, and there was a little pain in her shoulders, but such a move reminded her of the frailty of flesh and her own mortality. Bank too strongly, and you could pass out. "You're not winning this one, Motak," she said into her comm. Only her crew chief could hear it, but he shared in her sentiment. He gave her directions which she accepted and moved her craft to the left as they cleared the loop and headed for the final intersect. Ghoul came up to her side again, but he was still moving oddly, letting his wings wobble on the rebalance. She shook her head and focused on Motak, who had gunned his engine, showing significant burnout of his exhaust nozzles. He wouldn't dare cross her cockpit now, not with the MCR looking on so intently. In fact, Motak had acted reasonably well since his vanity display at the hospital. He'd let his racing skills speak for themselves. So perhaps he wasn't such a rotten son of a bitch after all. But she wouldn't be keeping this gift after the race. Red blips danced on her radar, showing hazards as she crossed the intersect. She drifted up in the lane, taking the traditional approach for a right-side cross. Motak followed, but Ghoul struggled to drift up, taking too long, letting his craft fall behind once more. She fought the urge to link into his comm. Motak tried to force her down. She gripped her stick and moved with him, not letting him gain advantage. The blips on the screen grew brighter. She keyed her focus, thrust her M50 forward, and sailed into the intersect. Lagging ships flew past her at the right angle, trying desperately to keep up with the pack. One nearly clipped her wing. She banked left just in time. She tried finding Ghoul and Motak in the flurry of crimson blips on her screen. It was impossible. She banked left, right, left again, swirling through screaming racers. Daring flew out of the intersect, righted her ship once more, and prepared for the final run. She checked her radar. The madness there settled to show those that had gotten through and were in pursuit. Damn, Motak settled again beside her, and Ghoul was not far behind, though struggling still. Why can't I shake these bastards? Finally, Ghoul made the move she was expecting. The Tavaran thrust his Hornet forward, clipping between her and Motak at such velocity that he was nothing but a blur. Her heart raced alongside him. She gunned her engine, falling just behind him, watching as the blips on her radar were replaced by the long green pulsing line of the final straightaway. She could hardly contain her excitement. She, Hypatia Daring, in second place on the final lap around Ellis 8. The perfect position to make a final move and win it all. And there was Zogat Ghoul, the master, egging her on, forcing her to put away her silly feud and chase him for glory, for fame, for personal fulfillment. A laugh of pure joy escaped her lips. Speed is life. They hit the final stretch together. One full lap around rocky Ellis 8, full bore speed. There was nothing like it in the galaxy. She could not contain her excitement. She screamed into her comm. Motak tried to muscle his way into her space. She refused him. He tried again. She pushed her M50 even faster, keeping pace with Ghoul, letting the green lights of the radar draw her forward. Ghoul slowed, fell alongside her, slowed again, letting her take the lead. Bullshit, she thought, frustration growing as she punched a panel and said to him, "What the hell are you doing?" She was greeted with coughing, spitting and moans. Something was terribly wrong. "I'm glad to speak to you once more, Hypatia. Do you remember what you told me? What you made me promise? If I were in a position to win, I'd win. And now here you are, about to win, and you're falling back. Explain." Ghoul coughed. It sounded thick, bloody. "It isn't important that I win, Hypatia. I've won enough in my life. It's time for others to shine. It's time for you to shine. Now, go beat him, and remember what I told you." He cut their link. Daring shouted, but he was gone. Ghoul fell back, and back, until she could not see him any more. Motak pounced and took the lead. Shit! She gunned it, moved down in the lane, set her craft just below Motak's. The sleek, long body of his 350R shadowing her smaller M50. There was no doubt his craft had the endurance. In a rough and tumble, he'd prevail. She had to get out from his shadow, his influence. The only way to do that. She tried pushing her plant, thumbed the throttle hard, but it did not register. She tried again. Her dashboard controls blinked, once, twice, then resettled with different settings, measurements, displays. What the? How's my ship? Daring's heart sank. Motak. "It is indeed," he said, his voice fuzzy over the comm. "And now that I have your undivided attention, I will reclaim what is mine." Nothing she did registered. She tapped panels, flicked switches, tried raising an MCR official over the comm. Everything was null, but her ship responded quickly to Motak's remote commands. He banked to the left, she did the same. He banked right, she followed. The Xi'an finally settled his 350R beside her, waved smugly at her through his cockpit window, commanded her ship to move slightly ahead, then said, "I'll let you take the lead for a little while, my dear. Then I'll dramatically pull forward at the last minute, flying on to victory, while you spiral out of control, hitting the Royal Grandstand and killing dozens. You'll be remembered as the Butcher of Ellis." She pushed and prodded at the stick, banged at the dashboard. She even struck the eject controls. Nothing. "I'll kill you first, you sorry son of a bitch." "And how will you do that, my dear? You have no control over anything, and your Tavaran is gone." As if on cue, a bright streak soared past them both, a flush of red and gold nozzle fire. It was burning, its power plant pushed beyond integrity. Daring squinted to see who it was. She recognised the blue Tavaran lettering on the hull. Ghoul. His Hornet barreled ahead, all flame and fury. Daring could hear Motak curse beneath his breath. She tried again to take control of her stick. Nothing. She tried calling out to Ghoul, but all she could hear was Motak's agitated mumblings as he commanded her ship to move up and ahead of him. Daring watched intently as Ghoul flipped his burning craft around, shifted it to align perfectly with her own, and headed straight for her. Her comm crackled with another voice. "Move," it said, ragged, faint. "Dive! Dive!" "I can't!" she screamed back, but there was no response. Only Motak's maddening cackle could be heard. "Say to him whatever you wish. He cannot hear you." Ghoul banked left. Daring's ship moved to shadow the Hornet. He banked right. She banked in kind. Ghoul's weakening voice continued pleading for her to get out of the way. Tears streamed down her face. Her voice broke from exertion. Motak laughed and laughed. Her ship spun like a corkscrew on its long axis. She closed her eyes, waited for impact, whispering softly to Ghoul, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Then she remembered. Beneath the dashboard of every M50 lay a panel, and inside it, a power cut-off valve independent of the main electrical and command systems. Could Motak have forgotten it? He might have, so foolishly overconfident in his scheming and backstabbing, and spending too much time in his 350R to remember all the systems of his secondary ship. But it might be a mistake, finally. Through the dizzying haze of her spinning, she reached beneath the dash, found the panel with shaking fingers, ripped it open, and pulled the valve. You lose, Motak. The power plant died, and with that sudden lack of propulsion, her ship spun to port. Zogat Ghoul slipped right past her, hitting Motak's ship square in the front, exploding on impact, and sending their shattered, burning hulls into the void. The cockpit came alive, her stick again responsive. She pulled her ship out of spin, reignited the plant, and blew across the finish line ahead of all the others. Her pit crew went wild, matching her own screaming, but for different reasons. They were joyous, elated, happy that their racer, the youngest human to ever win the MCR, had just done so, and in a blaze of glory. They were happy, and they deserved to be. She was not. Oh, she was happy to have won, to have taken the cup, to have proven to her father that her choice in career was not foolish. She laid her head back into her chair and cried joyous tears for Ghoul. She understood fully now his words, echoing loudly in her mind. Speed is life, and there was no life without speed. She understood that now. The cup was just one race in 1,000 that lay ahead of her, and there would be no true happiness until she had raced them all and chased down that beast that lay in front of her, that lay in front of all races. In his fiery death, Zogat Ghoul had finally caught the beast. Now, it was her turn to chase it, and she would do so for him, for Ghoul, forever. Beyond the finish line, beyond the grandstands, beyond the accolades and cheering fans, Hypatia Daring gunned her power plant and kept racing.
You should get yourself some NordVPN. You can go to nordvpn.com/BoredGamer or use the links down below. If you want a VPN to help you with accessibility, security, and or privacy on the internet, then NordVPN has got all of that. And it's on a huge discount if you use my links. Oh, click those links. Every month we have a giveaway. For January 2026, we are giving away 3 Crusader Intrepids, each one to a different winner. They come with a lifetime insurance and a gameplay package for Star Citizen. The Intrepid is a great little multi-role starship with sizable cargo, an internal living space, and a reasonable size 4 weapon for defense. Just comment on any of our videos made during January 2026 to be in for a chance of winning that. Please consider as well further supporting the channel by clicking the join button under our videos and becoming a channel member, or use the links down below to Patreon. It really does help. It enables us to make daily Star Citizen content, even when the YouTube algorithms or revenues are unkind. Thank you so much to all of you that already do that. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click any of our affiliate links underneath to find useful products for yourself. It all helps. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and I hope you have a great day.